Thank you for joining the second round of workshops in today's executive seminar, the NIAPR's virtual executive seminar. We're so glad to be able to offer you this and during this time at no charge, and really extracting some of the best presentations from what would have been our in-person executive seminar in Albany. But our team really wanted to make sure that this great information and these great people were available. So we're doing it virtually. We did one last week. We're doing one as well on next week. You will see any of the webinars we've done up till now. We've done a couple of them on COVID funds for consumers, and a separate one on providers. We've done one on Strive for 5 campaign to call 5 people every day for 30 days. We have a webinar, which again recorded, and PowerPoint on tips on working home and tips on how to get support, personal support online. We have a daily meditation on the homepage from Ruth. And any of these, and I encourage you to go to that. She puts a lot of effort into it. They're really a beautiful way to start the day in the middle of this stress. It really is a grounding experience. And then all these that we're doing now, the seminars, the workshops from last week, Peggy Swarbrick and Pat Nemick on wellness, the nation's experts on wellness, doing a workshop on that. And we had one on the workforce with the folks at McSilver. And then we had a plenary with a really outstanding one with some really seasoned, accomplished leaders in our field, really talking in very personal terms around their work, their commitment, what it's like to lead in this environment. All of these are really high quality, and I encourage you to go to the homepage and see them all. I'm very excited about this. Peer services are certainly dear to my heart and to NIAPR's, and we've come a long way from the values of the human rights movements to the principles of peer support, Sherry Mead, to the models of peer support that you'll be hearing about today. So hopefully there's been a consistency that we have the right values and the right practices with mature models that are very effective. And I think you'll hear that today. So I'm basically going to flip slides for the presenters. They'll each have 15 minutes, and Len, I guess, is in the chat box, will be nudging me or texting me if I can't see the box, if you're going long, and we'll take down questions. And Len, will you be emailing them to me or texting or chatting, or how am I going to get your questions?
I can email you.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, so why don't we get started? Our first presenter is Doug Hovey. He's the Executive Director, or CEO at Independent Living in Newburgh, New York. And Doug, I'm going to turn your slide.
Well, thank you, Harvey. Great to be here today. And, thanks to you, Harvey, Len, and the NIAPR's team for putting on this great event. And, I've always said that NIAPR's is the steering wheel of the behavioral health system and serves oftentimes as the conscience of marginalized folks. So I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for NIAPR's. And when you say that these the seminar is free, as a board member, I want to know how we're making money these days, but we'll talk about that offline. So anyway, it's great to be here today. Before I jump into my presentation, I just wanted to say that, I'm a little bit tired of hearing people say that these are unprecedented times, these are challenging times, these are interesting times. But the fact of the matter is, all those statements are very true. We've never seen anything like this before. I know many of you watch the governor's press conferences every day. I certainly try to catch as many of them as I possibly can. Over the weekend, he put up an interesting slide that made comparisons of this experience that we're going through to other crises that we've experienced over the last 100 years. For example, the pandemic of 1918, World War I, which lasted 4 years, the Great Depression, which lasted 4 years, World War II, which lasted about 6 years, and then the Vietnam War, which lasted 8 years. And one of the interesting things to note about the Vietnam War and growing up, during the Vietnam era, I was always taken back by the fact that we lost 58,000 people in that 8-year span. And that was just always incredible to me as a young boy growing up. It's always striking. And to think that in just 8 weeks or 10 weeks, we've lost almost that number of people here in the United States is just, it's devastating to think about. So my heart goes out to all of those families who've been directly impacted. I know we have had some losses here with some of our consumers, and it takes its toll on particularly, especially on our employees. So it's been a tough, 8 or 9 weeks all around the state. And New York City, Westchester, the Mid-Hudson Valley are really being hit hard. And we're especially concerned about the congregate care facilities. And Harvey, thanks for your leadership. We pulled together a coalition of associations and put together a strong communication to the governor, just raising more awareness about the need to get more state support to those congregate care facilities, especially the nursing homes, the group homes, the community residences, the adult homes and the prisons and the psych centers where people don't have the same opportunity to social distance as everybody else. So I just wanted to say thank you, Harvey, again for your leadership. It's great to be here today. A little bit about my agency, Independent Living, Inc. We were introduced in 1987. We've been providing peer-based supports since that time. And then in the 90s with OMH funding, we introduced some peer bridger type services, peer hospital diversion services back in 1996. And so we're working in cooperation with several hospitals in the region. We do have contracts with OASAS. We've got 2 recovery community outreach centers that cover the lower 7 counties of the Hudson Valley. And we have another regional project funded through OMH called Reach One, which is an exciting project that's been going on for several years now in partnership with Steve at People USA and the MHA of Rockland County. And that's a peer outreach and engagement project that covers multiple counties. And there's a lot of economies of scale and sharing, particularly around training and coordination of services in the region. We also have the Orange County Crisis Call Center, which is about 12 months old now. And we're one of 3 partners in that project. We provide the peer supports in response to the Orange County Crisis Call Center under the leadership of our local commissioner, Darcy Miller. And Darcy Miller has always said that, crisis response can be virtual, can be, without walls, as she has constantly put it. And so we're always grateful for her leadership here in Orange County. We also have a self-directed care program, and I heard that mentioned earlier. We were one of 2 projects, pilot projects. It was independent living and community access down in the city that introduced a self-directed care program. We've got 156 people in that project now, and we've got a wait list of about 160 people. It's interesting to see the spike in demand for that service, particularly in the last 8 to 10 weeks. We're responsible for 2 apartment complexes where we provide daily well checks, in-person well checks with the folks who live in those complexes, making sure that they're okay. As I mentioned before, we did have some losses that have been devastating to our staff. So we're trying to do our best to check in with people to make sure that they're getting what they need when they need it. And getting the appropriate health care as they need it. We also have a consumer-directed home care program that covers the region with 400 consumers in that program, and we're doing daily wellness checks on those folks as well. Many of those people are shut in, and so they need regular checks. We're using all of the new mediums or existing mediums: Zoom, GoToMeeting, StreamYard, House Party. The different types of methodologies to connect with people, and virtual seems to be working well. We've got about 75% of our employees in independent living working remotely and using virtual means to connect with people. 15% of our staff come to the office each day, are working either here on site or in the field. And then 10% right now, unfortunately, are not working. Their jobs, require groups and things of that nature, mostly in the employment arena. So with people not working right now, which is a big concern, those employment staff are currently not working, but still on payroll. We're hoping that's going to change soon. I want to talk about this new technology called PRRX. I'm sure many of you have heard about it. There's a lot of intrigue and a lot of question. First, I should tell you that the PRRX was developed by a woman by the name of Marissa Barbieri. She's the owner of Competitive Solutions, which is a software IT development company. They're doing some really innovative and creative work around behavioral health services and coming up with new ways to provide services and to track data. The PureRx model it's a peer deployment tool that has been very effective. And the quick way to describe what it's like is it's like Uber, right? If you need transportation, you send out an alert. It goes out to a group of available drivers in the region, and within a matter of minutes, right, a driver shows up. So traditionally, our way of receiving referrals has included several ways. It may include faxes, calls, or in person. So if we have a local hospital that needs one of our peers to respond to their emergency department, that's the traditional way. But today, using PureRx, like Uber, they're able to send out one alert that goes out to a broad network of available peers in that respective hospital community, so that the peers, whoever's available, can actually respond more quickly. So we've been able to reduce our response times from several hours down to 10 to 14 minutes, which has just been amazing. And the rate of connection has increased dramatically. So the number of people who are actually getting connected with a peer has increased dramatically. So if you look at the slide here, this is how it works. So a peer is needed for a client or a patient or a consumer who's at the hospital, right? And it can be a hospital, it can be a drug court, it can be an urgent care center or a police station. And keep in mind that right now we're using this program for hospital emergency departments and for a crisis call center here in Orange County, right? So if a caller uses PureRx to locate a peer, the caller is the hospital, or it's let's say one of the nurses at the hospital emergency department. They send out an alert. Any one of our peers in a given region can respond to that alert. And the one who is probably most available, closest, and the one that meets the definition of the algorithm, and I'll talk about that in a minute, gets connected with the consumer requesting the service, okay? So the PureRx team and the algorithm determines the match for the peer. Harvey, if you could just flip that slide, please. Thank you. So the benefits of PureRx is it streamlines training for both peers and locations. You get quicker response times. You get better matching of peers to individuals requesting peer support. And it creates a local healthy competition. And what I mean by that is there are 3 partner organizations using PureRx. It's Independent Living, Catholic Charities, and Alcohol and Drug Abuse Council. So we have a little bit of fun with this. When an alert goes out, it's always interesting to see the data, to see whose peers actually got the call. So it's a healthy competition, and it encourages quality and improvement of our processes. So the other thing is it provides data. It helps us to track certain types of data that let us know the times, the volume times, the high call volume times, when we need to have peers available. Locations like a hospital or a clinic can sign up for PRRX. And once they're verified by the PRRX team, they're able to sign in using PRRX. And it was interesting when we did the first training for the first hospital at Montefiore St. Luke's Hospital here in Newburgh. Marissa Barbieri and I went to this training, or to provide the training. And when we got there, we show up to the emergency department and we're thinking we're going to go to a conference room and provide the training. But Kathy Sheehan, who oversees this particular emergency department, said, no, we're going to do it right here in the emergency department. Now, keep in mind, this is a busy emergency department. They've got people coming in with all kinds of medical issues. And we did the training right there. And that was brilliant, because that's where the action happens. But the computer on the desk is set up with PRRX. So any one of the nurses, rather than picking up the phone to call to get a peer, all they have to do is send out an alert via PRRX. All of our peers have their smartphones and they have the PRRX app on their phone. So any one of my peers, or all of them, I should say, will get that alert. Whoever's available and not currently working with somebody can respond, right? So the location can make a request for a peer at any time. And they specify what they're looking for in a peer too. They may need somebody who has expertise in substance use disorder or peer mental health services, or co-occurring. They may even get more specific and want somebody who's a specific age group or a specific gender, okay? So agencies who can provide peers sign up once they're validated by PRRX. They're able to input the information about each of their peers into the system. The agencies enter the hours that their peers are available, and peer supervisors can override that and continually adjust the hours of availability. And we adjust our hours, again, based on the volume time, the high call times. Peer training and credentials are entered into the system so that we know that our people are, in fact, certified and credentialed. And then the demographics for each peer is also entered: the age range, the gender, the language spoken. We get requests for people who are Spanish speaking, or in some instances, maybe somebody who needs a sign language interpreter. So we want to make sure in advance that we know what we're being faced with. And so if somebody shows up to the hospital and they've overdosed, the last thing we want is for that emergency department to discharge that person back to the same environment or the same situation that caused them to come to the emergency department in the first place. So we want to try to connect them with a peer who's been there, who has that lived experience, that can provide proactive support and engagement to the individual. And oftentimes it's helping the family members as well, so that they're being supported as they're going through this. So when a peer is requested, a text alert will go out to all the peers. And by the way, there's no PHI that's recorded in this particular app. We do keep a lot of data, but there's no protected health information. Peers who are able to respond, again, they text back yes in order to be considered. And after 10 minutes, the algorithm will select the most qualified best match peer. If no one's replied in 10 minutes, the opportunity remains open for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, the call will expire and the location needs to resubmit the request. But our goal is to make sure that we have 100% response within that 10-minute period, or at least the 30-minute period. And as I said before, we've been able to reduce our response times down from, several hours, and sometimes not even making a connection, to 10 to 14 minutes, okay? So once a peer is selected, the location gets an alert with the peer's name, and then the peer can actually call the hospital when they're on the way so that they can get the background information about the individual needing services, okay? So as an agency using PRRX, we're able to run reports to see how many requests were placed at a given time, how many requests each location has made. When I say location, I'm talking about hospitals, and what types of situation peers are being requested for. Again, mental health, substance use, or co-occurring. What characteristics of the requested peer were. some people obviously have trauma. They may have a certain request. They may want somebody a certain age, or they may want somebody a certain gender. That's important. The competing priorities existed that prevented our staff. It's important for us to know if nobody responded, well, I want to know why. Or if certain staff responded and others didn't, was that staff available and not somebody else? So the data is very helpful. And if we're staffing our programs during the highest needs and times, that's important as well. Okay, so some of the barriers. I mean, the greatest barrier that we've faced so far is that oftentimes hospitals will call us and tell us they want PRRX. And the challenge is the demand for peers, or should I say the supply for peers. We just don't have enough peers to service every hospital community. In an ideal world, we'd have probably 5 or 10 peers working in each hospital community that could respond to those calls to the emergency department, or even the inpatient units when they have an individual who's being discharged or transitioned back to the community. So that's the big challenge. The other thing, it's not HIPAA protected, so only limited information is tracked. So there's pros and cons to that. And we're continually working to refine the application so that, we're going to move to a 3.0 at some point in the future. Hopefully we'll get this app in the hands of consumers so they can send out their own alerts rather than the hospitals or the crisis call centers. Okay, thank you.
Oh, I had you guys on mute, sorry. Doug, thank you for a great presentation. Doug, what's the, couple questions. What's the cost of the platform?
You can go on to the website, prrx.com. It gives you that information. There's a couple of levels. I mean, one level is actually free. But if you want the data tracking component, there's a monthly fee. It's very reasonable, but that information is all available at prrx.com. And the owner, as I said, Marissa Barbieri, very, very receptive to speaking with you or coming out and giving you a tour of the product as well.
I've got 2 more questions, all very suspiciously by the same person, Chaco Mathai, I want to say. Now, so great to have you with us, Chaco. Can you provide the current data you have about how many people have engaged so far? And how do you determine? Yeah, go ahead.
So we were involved in a beta test back in the fall of 2019. And so, it's not quite a year. So, but I would say we get between 20 to 40 calls each month, if that gives you an indication. And it depends on the time of year and the month where we see higher volumes.
Last question, privacy protections?
Yes, there's no protected health information collected. So there's really no concerns about privacy in the actual PRRX application. And we are looking at ways to, put PHI in there and make it protected. But right now, there's no PHI that's collected.
Doug, thank you so much. I know you've been really high on this for a while, and I can see why. And thanks for sharing it with us today. I know there's a lot of interest in it. The next presentation is by our friends at the MHA of Westchester. This was a model that actually NIAPRS and the MHA had conceived of. Both of us had models going back a number of years to working with people who had not responded to previous kinds of services or care, who were going in and out of hospital, jail, and prison, who were chewing up a lot of service dollars without feeling and getting better. And each of us had a model that we sort of collapsed them into this inset, and the MHA, we were able to get some legislative dollars for them to do this. And there's a subtext here, which is this, and I'm particularly excited about it, and one of the intents of the model is this is the alternative to outpatient commitment. If you have folks that are, if you have folks that, this is a system that often labels people as not compliant, doesn't recognize that this is often about system failure or service, inadequacy, engagement that's not, maybe not the right sort of fit or person. And the idea of then just going through a one-size-fits-all court order to the same services that may not have worked, it's not good for people and it's not right. And so this was a very exciting opportunity for us to present a model that the Assembly is watching sort of carefully on, can you engage people who normally don't want to engage or haven't been satisfied or well served? Is there a way to do that in a respectful way where people do want to engage and where good things happen? So I'm going to turn this over to Raquel and Cindy, who operate this wonderful program.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Harvey. I'm Raquel Bender. I'm the coordinator of integrated services with MHA of Westchester. I also am the coordinator for this INSET program. So I have had I've been fortunate enough to, kind of start it off and be with it from the beginning. So it's been a really exciting experience, especially being a peer professional myself. So yeah, we've had some awesome outcomes, which I'm excited to share.
And
okay, Cindy, you want to say hi?
Sure. I'm Cindy Peterson-Dana, and I'm currently the Vice President for Peer and Recovery Services with MHA of Westchester. Been there about 13 years, been in the field, seems like forever, I think 35 years. I think most of you are, probably heard of MHA of Westchester and Westchester in the Hudson Valley, also into Rockland County and some of the other surrounding counties. We kind of provide a rich array of services, children, adults, more recently veterans, families, clinical, housing, care management, and peer. And so as somebody who myself came into this field as a peer, as a teenager, and had some pretty intense lived experiences, went on to work in the field, and in more recent times became a mom and now have 4 young adult children, a couple of whom have had pretty significant issues, with the mental health system. I have often struggled with how can we bring all these worlds together? And it's always kind of sad to me when things get siloed. I think we're all trying our hardest to integrate things. So INSET really has felt like an opportunity that we haven't had before to really kind of bring the best of all worlds together. Next slide. Okay, so I just real quickly want to say MHA really strives, I think like most of us do, to integrate peer services across the agency. If you could go back one slide just for a second. I just wanted to say, we do have peers in clinics, in care management across the agency. We have, I would say at this point, kind of 4 premier peer programs. The Sterling Community Center has been around longer than MHA. I think it actually led to MHA back in the 40s. But that is a peer professionally run community center. It is a place. It's in White Plains, and it's really home to thousands of members over many decades who've come and used our services. We really try to work in a very open way so people can, come and choose how they want to participate. The Westchester Recovery Network are a series of peer programs. We serve people across Westchester individually, in groups. We work in the Westchester Jail providing peer support, work in homeless shelters, work wherever people are at. Our peer training has been around for over 12 years now. We've recently expanded not only to offering New York State peer specialist training, but also SERPA training for SUD experiences. But like Raquel and Harvey mentioned, I guess it was mid-2018, we really were able to have this opportunity to start INSET. intensive and sustained engagement and treatment. And so we're real excited to talk about that today. I am going to say we, like everybody here, have been really hard hit with COVID-19 in the Westchester area, Hudson Valley, New York City. So, you know, we've adapted to telehealth, but we've also had to adapt to kind of a wide range of experiences, which on one end have been extremely, you know, full of loss and trauma.
Thank you, Cindy. So, inset, I don't want to go, just go over it too quickly, but you guys will get the slides. So really, Inset is it's a peer professional program. It's a mobile program. We do have a touchdown space at our Sterling Community Center. We have an office where people can come in and where the staff do their work, but primarily it's mobile. We work with people who, the criteria basically for participation is anybody who is AOT eligible. So whether they are on AOT, at risk of AOT, meet criteria for AOT, and we try to provide an alternative to AOT if possible. If not, we work with the person to kind of get them through it, to see what has not been working in the past, what we can do to help bridge to different services, maybe some more traditional services or non-traditional services. And we bridge the gap for people who are currently in the jail, hospital, have recently been discharged, etc. We do have a case manager on staff, or care coordinator on staff. We're not billable at this time, so the care manager does not, we're not duplicating any services, and her role is really to try and help provide whatever case management is needed until we can bridge, and get the person connected to more traditional services.
This is just Harvey. It's important to notice this is a legislative ad. It's not funded through the Medicaid or traditional systems. It's essentially a one-time only grant from the Assembly we were able to get. We are working with them on getting an extension and an expansion, but that explains a little bit about, for those of you wondering how it's financed in that way. It's a grant from the Assembly. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Raquel.
No, it's okay. You can go to the next slide.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, really, our goal always is we're person-centered, recovery-oriented, trauma-informed, provide trauma-informed care, and it's all through autonomy and choice. So INSET is a completely voluntary program, and we have found that the ability to make it voluntary and to have people choose whether or not they want to work with us has been incredible for our engagement success rates. Of course, there's going to be people who are hesitant and resistant to it, so we just work with them wherever the person is. We start in the hospital, we start if we meet them in the shelter, wherever it is. We just try to say, we're peers, we have had similar experiences, or we may have been in the in the shelter ourselves at some point, and we just really want to see and ask the person, what's going on, what are your immediate needs, how can we help you right off the bat, without worrying about therapy and probation and medication and all these different things that people are sort of, that's thrown at them straight from the get-go. We just want to see, what is it that you need right away, and we will do the best that we can to help them get that.
So we're really lucky at INSET because we can really start, as Raquel said, with engagement. What are people's immediate concerns? Maybe they need minutes on their cell phone, maybe they need shoes, maybe they don't have a place to stay that night. We really want to, we have the flexibility to respond in a very immediate way. We have 24/7 support including, especially now with telehealth, but prior to now, we had 24/7 peer support. So, and we kind of immediately jump in. I mean, if somebody needs help with benefits that day, whatever is most pressing for them. And I think the idea is, something we have long talked about, which is that self-determination, self-agency is kind of key to recovery. So kind of combining this peer approach with a very rich team that includes a care manager, a benefits specialist. Many of us have lived experience that we disclose kind of from the beginning to really create the connection and the hope and the safety. But we also really think it's important to work with the person's social network, their family. Often people have been separated from family, and we're visitors in people's lives. We're not there to create a dependency. We're really there to be there when they need them, to bridge into services, but also bridge into natural supports. And again, as a mom myself, I really experienced firsthand how parents can be left out of the process, blamed. I mean, it really hurts the whole, I would say, system, the person and their family and friends, when people get separated in services. So we do everything we can to kind of keep the door open, invite people in. We do what's called social network meetings using something called peer-supported open dialogue. This was developed in Finland, used in the parachute model in NYC, but we've been able to integrate that in a unique way where we have teams of peers and clinicians running social network meetings with people and the people they invite from their family, friends. And we kind of think that's another key to why this is working is, the goal is not necessarily immediate consensus or adherence. The goal is really just hearing everybody and then step by step finding a path forward. So we're going to talk a little bit more and use some examples about how we work, and then also get to how we've adapted with COVID.
So this is an example of somebody who we currently work with. We worked with before COVID and after, but this is really a prime example of the work that we do and how all areas of somebody's life are have been involved. So Allison, prior to inset, I'm not going to read everything, but she basically was in the hospital a lot. She was definitely at risk for state psychiatric hospitalization, so long-term. We worked with her from the beginning. When she was in the hospital, we engaged with her. We, were a part of her sort of team, even in the hospital. After she got out of the hospital, I think the first time she got out of the hospital, we had been able to get her a prepaid cell phone with some minutes, so we engaged with her. We brought her to the nearest shelter. We stayed with her until she was able to go in. So she did have a phone. Unfortunately, a couple days later, or I don't know how long later it was, but she did go back to the hospital. She had basically said to us that she'd rather be in the hospital than be in the shelter or be, homeless. And she was doing everything that she could. She knew what she needed to do, continuing to go to the ER, continuing to make kind of scary threats about what she might have done to herself in order to get into the hospital. So she stayed there for quite a while. We were able to help her get into a community residence or adult home, I believe she was in, which at the time was not exactly what she wanted, but it was better for her than being in the hospital. While she was in the hospital, she did decline services from one of the local ACT teams. She just did not feel like she wanted it. She didn't want anybody coming to where she lives. There was a little concern that if she wasn't willing to be part of the ACT team, then she was going to stay in the hospital. She was going to go to state hospitalization. So when she was discharged, she did agree to meet with the ACT team with us in our inset office where she felt comfortable. And she agreed to work with them. And she sometimes continues to, they'll come to the inset office and meet with her there because that's where she feels comfortable. She has been a part of a few of the social network meetings that Cindy was talking about with her sister. And it's been really amazing to see the reconnection that her and her sister have gained from having this open dialogue. And we just have some, numbers. We didn't really put too much information, but basically for one night stay in a hospital, a psychiatric hospital, it's over $2,000 a night per person. So at the bottom of this slide, you can see approximately, if she had continued to stay in the hospital since July of 2019, what it would have cost. With INSET's assistance, working with her ability to get out of the hospital and into a more independent living, the costs significantly dropped, and there were significant cost savings. Another example, just decreased contact with the legal system and family reconnection. Brenda, history of numerous arrests and incarcerations. Prior to working with INSET, we actually started working with her in the jail. One of our recovery specialists works in the local jail, so we worked with her starting then. She's been out for 17, actually it might be longer. I think it might be 19 months now that she's been out. And she has not had any legal issues. She's reconnecting with her mother and young son. And yeah, she's just really, reaching out to us when she needs us. She doesn't, we're not 24/7 with her, we're not as intense with her as we had been in the beginning. In the beginning, we had been really working with her often, and now it's sort of just as needed, which is nice. Carl, this is just kind of a cool story. Prior to engaging with INSET, he had been incarcerated for quite a while. After incarceration, he went to an inpatient hospital. Then he became he came to MHA for clinical services, was referred to INSET. After 8 months of working with INSET, he did become interested in peer work himself. So he completed our MHA's peer training program, and he's working with employment services to become a New York certified peer recovery specialist, which has been really incredible to be a part of that journey with him.
So we want to kind of get to how all of our services have been affected during COVID. And as everybody said, I think we're all kind of in the same boat. I have heard this quote recently from a woman named Sarah Taylor about how we're all in the same boat, but we're not in the same storm. And so what I've really noticed among staff and participants especially is kind of the wide range of reactions, the surprises on both sides. But they really range from silver linings to life and death issues. I think everybody's touched on this many times, but obviously there's a loss of our routine structure, our ability. We're mobile, so we get out in the community. We really try to be where people are at. So we've actually been put on lockdown. We can no longer do that. We can't enter residences where people are living. The jail service discontinued at the moment. We can't even do telehealth or make connections with them at the moment. It's really been a challenge just to kind of get through this day by day and make sure everybody's okay. So we're kind of going back to very basic safety, self-care issues. We have been able, though, to be creative, as a lot of you have talked about, with Zoom meetings. We really went with what people want to do. It's kind of addressed all the 8 dimensions of wellness. We find that a lot of people have electronic devices, so it hasn't been as hard as we were imagining. But then for the few people, sometimes the most vulnerable, don't have a cell phone. They don't have minutes. They don't keep their phone charged. So those have been individuals. We're actually going to talk about a couple where it really has led to some pretty difficult situations. And, you know, we've really had to kind of maximize our creative ideas to reach them. So our food pantry, real quick, I'm going to say Sterling Community Center has a food pantry that's actually available to all participants, and even the community comes in to use it through the Food Bank of Westchester. We've adapted it since the center's currently closed, and we've used our transportation, which is usually for participants, to actually deliver bags of food to people in need across Westchester. We've certainly put it out to all participants and clients and families within MHA. We do no contact deliveries. And we don't have endless resources. So we've really put it out as kind of like something for people who don't have a car, who can't get out to a pickup delivery, or can't get to a pantry, and are really, kind of isolated at home. Our 24/7 peer support hospital diversion phone line funded by the County of Westchester. Actually, we were able to expand that to anybody in Westchester who needs extra 24/7 peer support. Mentioned we're doing Zoom groups, check-ins. We're really encouraging staff to take care of themselves because we're noticing that the stress of this affects people differently, and it's such a different kind of challenge than anything we've been through. We're still learning as we go. And, I think the cool thing about being peers, and I think we're all peers, as Harvey kind of alluded to, is that as we get affected, we can kind of notice that. And when it's helpful, even share that with staff, with participants. So I'm going to say, we're learning as we go. Next slide. So biggest thing about, I think, all of us on this call and, doing this hard work, but INSET really aims at not giving up. We think the connection to the person has to come first, and anything we can do to really reach out in creative ways using our peer experience to build trust and figure out what do people need. So we're doing the same thing now during COVID-19. Next slide.
Oh,
Okay, so I think we have two quick examples of sort of, the examples I gave prior were kind of pre-COVID, and now we've had two, more than two, but these are sort of two intense and serious situations that we've had with some participants that have made what we do a little bit trickier, since we can't be physically with the person, we can't drive them places. So we've had to kind of be a little bit creative, like Cindy said. So Dennis, he was discharged from the psychiatric hospital less than a month before the COVID crisis. He was working with INSET. He had about 2 therapy appointments with MHA as well. Lived independently in an SRO, but was having difficulty prior to quarantine, just difficulty connecting. And actually, Harvey, you could go, back.
I'm going a little nutty with this because I just realized we're pretty much out of time. So
okay,
slide motion, my sense of panic about that, but
all right.
Go ahead.
So long story short with Dennis, he, we had been trying to work with him as best as possible. We really didn't have that much time working with him before quarantine started. So he did not have a cell phone. We were worried about him being in the SRO by himself. We were calling the people from the SRO, asking if they could check in on him. They checked in on him one time, said that he was okay. We continued to try to, ask to check in because we were just concerned about him. After kind of, getting on their case, they checked on him again. He was not in a good space. He had some medical concerns. He hadn't been eating. So he was taken and admitted for medical reasons to the hospital. So we were just very thankful that we were ongoing and doing as much as we could to keep people checking in on him, even though it was difficult because they didn't have the appropriate PPE at times. So we had to kind of work with the system and wait until the SRO was able to get what they needed. And then I know we're late. So this is just sort of a similar story of Eric living in an adult home that was impacted by COVID. And he also needed to get to a hospital, but due to a lot of the systemic issues going on and kind of overload amongst the staff, there was difficulty getting him there. So we kind of inserted ourselves in and got him the help that he needed.
Thank you so much, you two. I'm going to try to ask you a question a bit later about how INSIT is functioning in terms of engaging people of diversity, just a wide variety of people. But I don't have time now. Bookmark that question for hopefully later. Here's Kirsten Vincent. Kirsten, I'm sorry, and Steve too, that I'm not doing a good enough job monitoring this. So here you go. Kirsten, you're on.
Thanks, Harvey. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our services as well. I want to focus primarily on our telepeer services. Just very quick background on who we are. Housing Options, and we are rebranding. We're about to become Recovery Options in June. Started in the 90s, supporting people who are coming out of different psych centers to find safe and secure housing. About a decade ago, we started really diversifying. We started multi-county recovery centers. We started crisis intervention programming. We have 2 peer-run crisis respites, and within those respites, we also have 2 warm lines, and we have a text line as well. This has been a really challenging time for us, as as everybody else has said. With the exception of our site-based programs, we are completely in the community. So transitioning a whole bunch of people to work from home so that we could reduce the number of people in offices definitely has been challenging, and telehealth has been something that we've been really working at successfully doing, and we've had a lot of success. First week or so was a little rocky, but things have definitely gotten a lot better. So Harvey, if you can just go back one for just a second, one slide. Sure. Thanks.
Absolutely.
In 2018, we were discussing the concept of we couldn't decide if we wanted to call it a virtual respite or a virtual warm line, but we had gotten a grant for a fantastic teleconferencing system. And I thought, how great would this be? We have a really large area that we cover. Geographically, we're the biggest peer agency. We cover 22 counties in the Western New York and Finger Lakes region. And a lot of the participants that we work with have trouble accessing peer services because of the distance, and for some there's mobility issues. So we thought we would take our warm line virtual through our teleconferencing system. We also thought this would be a great way to give tours of the respite, allow people to meet respite staff prior to a visit to get some additional support and to be more comfortable with their stay. Next slide, please. So what we did was we created a central intake line where somebody will call in, they'll speak to a peer specialist. This specialist will set them up in a virtual meeting room and then have one of our virtual peer specialists come on in and talk to them. So we started out using Skype for Business, found it was a little clunky for what we wanted to do. We're now using Zoom. We send that link out to the participant. They enter the meeting room and they get an hour and a half time with our peer support specialist. It longer if need be, and if somebody needs support past about an hour and a half, we can transition them to one of our respite staff or to another peer specialist if they need a lot of additional time. When we started the line, it ran about 10 hours a day from noon to 10 at night. Once the COVID-19 crisis settled in, we took all of our lines, our warm line, our virtual line, and our text line 24/7 in order to support the community around us. And we open the line to anybody who wants to call. So geographically, it doesn't matter where someone is, everybody is welcome to call. So again, we have that one central intake line and then 4 operators at a time able to take those virtual calls, again, 24/7. Current engagement was good, but it has definitely picked up because we've been able to open up to additional hours. But any new program that you start can take a little bit of time to get off the ground. What we've been told the most notable outcome for us is that our callers feel that they can see someone, and that makes them a lot more comfortable, makes them feel safer. Some people like just talking on the phone, some people like just texting, but some people really want to see someone, even if it's seeing them virtually. I know that our staff says that they feel a stronger connection to our callers for the same reason. So I think it's really been nice to be able to help people to make a stronger connection. Next slide, please. And I have to agree with Doug. I don't think I don't think a day goes by where I don't receive an email that has the phrase unprecedented times or challenging times, but it's true. What we are experiencing right now is incredibly different than anything that we've ever experienced before. The first couple weeks of the stay-at-home order, our respites, people coming into our respites really slowed down, but like I said, our call volume increased and people wanted to come in, but they were so nervous about exposure to the virus. That has changed over the last several weeks. People have become more comfortable coming back into the respites, and as I said, the call lines have just picked up tremendously. Our PPE has been in short supply, but we focused making sure that our crisis intervention staff received everything that they need, because they see people every single day, whether it's in the respites, whether it's in our engagement center or renewal center, and those have all remained open 24/7. And like I said, morale was really low at the beginning. A lot of that was fear, nerves, concern. People, I don't particularly like change. I don't know a lot of people who particularly like change, but fear of that unknown. We were really lucky. We've been able to, keep everybody working. We found some things for people to do that might not be their regular jobs, but we were able to transition them to other activities and keep everybody working. And this is our current normal. And, I don't know what our next current normal will be, but we'll adapt to that as well. I think that as somebody that runs a peer agency, what I've noticed is, we talk about resilience in the peer movement, and it's really true. I think that we, as a large culture, have really adapted to what we needed to adapt to do what we are best at, which is provide support and comfort and in a safe and non-judgmental way to all of the people of our community. So feel free to give us a call. Those are the numbers. So the warm line numbers, there are 4 of them. 2 are toll free. 2 of them are local to the Western New York region. The text line, the virtual line, the slide that, here is the slide with the respites and the renewal centers. So if you are in either the Erie County or Chautauqua-Cattaraugus County area, you can certainly give the respites or the renewal center a call. And even the staff in the respites are also providing phone support. So if you have trouble getting through on the warm lines, feel free to call one of the respites and talk to one of the staff there. Like I said, this has really been a challenging time for all of us. And I hope I didn't speed through any of that information, but I also want to make sure that I give as much time as I can to Steve. What I want to say is there are definitely some takeaways that are going to impact, I know, my agency and our services moving forward. We would always rather be face-to-face. That's who we are. We are in the community. We are working face-to-face with our peers. We're there. We're providing them support. But we have learned over the last several weeks that we also do a fantastic job when we are providing services in the telehealth realm, whether it's in our housing programs, whether it's in our recovery centers. I would say that our HCBS services have seen the most dramatic and positive effects from being able to provide services via telehealth. It has really been interesting to see how many additional participants we've been able to connect with that we had challenges connecting with before. And we're building, relationships via the telehealth realm. So I'm really hoping that as we move past the pandemic, that we will be able to continue to have some sort of hybrid where we can continue to learn, where we continue to utilize telehealth. I know I've learned a lot personally. I've heard some of this from my staff. We don't want to take the small things for granted anymore. I work a lot. I work a very fast-paced job, and slowing down a little bit is really, reminded me that I truly need to appreciate every moment I have with my family, my friends. Some of the things I've complained about in the past are not that important. And for a lot of the other people on the panel, we have a lot of face-to-face meetings, and sometimes that can get, in the past, that seemed really challenging. I will never complain about face-to-face meetings again because I miss seeing all the people that I work with. I have learned that I can live without things that I really thought were important. I haven't had Tim Hortons in like 6 weeks, and I survived. The first week was a little shaky, but we're good moving forward. The biggest takeaway, though, is I learned there's nothing worse than watching someone you really care about lose a loved one and seeing the anguish that they went through because they couldn't go and say goodbye. A very, very good friend of mine, his mom passed away about 10 days ago, and he and his family were unable to go and to say goodbye because they couldn't travel because of where his mom lived. They said goodbye via Skype, but it was heart-wrenching for me to see them go through that with knowing there was nothing I could do to do other than to just be there to support them as best as possible. And I would also say that without the peer community and the love and support that we give to each other, this would be even more difficult of a time. So I try to thank my staff. We have converted all of our meetings to Zoom meetings. We meet very regularly, both as an agency and as our individual teams within the agency. And it has been really wonderful to be able to support each other and, be there as much as we can be for each other. And again, I'm sorry I kind of rushed through that, but I want to give Steve a bunch of time.
No, that was so powerful in what you just said about standing by watching somebody pass. You hear stories like that, but you made it so real here, and I appreciate it. We're trying to see the upside and all the things we can do. This is the pain that the environment we're working in. And thank you.
Thank you
for all that you. Sorry, my fault for not better, but I'll do whatever you want me to do here.
Okay, what do you want to do? Yeah, I'm here.
Well,
Hey,
how do you
everyone.
want to? There you go.
Yeah, I'm going to go pretty quickly through this stuff. I think a lot of people know we were People Incorporated, established back in 1990. We're now People USA because we've gotten more international with our work and stuff, and so it just made sense to rebrand ourselves and grow in that way. But we did come from the grassroots, and one thing I just want to say is that we or I never forget where we came from. All of my staff are all advocates. They remain advocates because we still have a pretty broken system, and we're here to make a difference. And so that's been at the heart of our work since I started at People over 20 years ago now. Next slide, Harvey. So just qualifications are, we work really hard to open like the first Rose House, or the first, I call them crisis diversion houses, hospital diversion houses, when I first opened the first Rose House. And that's really what it was about, because I knew that hospitals are not the place to go when you're in crisis, and that we could create something better. And so that's what we did. That's where we came from. We qualified, in becoming a more respected organization, peer-run, especially those of you that run peer-run organizations. You know that you're always under the microscope, and people are waiting for you to mess up and say, see, there they go, the peers can't do it, whatever, and so we had to work hard to really build a system of care from a lived experience perspective, to show that we can not only provide a better service, we can also integrate our services, and we can teach others how to provide better services. And that's what's our goal, again, has been that for years and years. Next slide, Harv. Next slide. So this is just a graphic, what did we have to do and how did we do it? And we do use a lot of psych rehab in our organization. We're moving towards becoming a certified psych rehab organization, because I believe in the Boston model when it was created by Bill Anthony and the team there at Boston University, on what recovery really is. And it's a very peer-focused approach to teaching people. So we do a lot of training in that area, and we're going to continue that. We innovated. We wanted to innovate peer-run crisis responses and case studies. The Rose Houses became that, and they've been growing throughout the nation and the world, ever since we've opened. Integrated local crisis response. The case study was the Dutchess County Stabilization Center that we actually created, co-founded with several organizations, and I'll talk more about that in a second. And I will also reflect back to what we're doing with the COVID and how we're dealing with all of that. So next slide, Harv. So growing a recovery workforce, I mentioned the CPRP, and I didn't need to have 2 slides here. Good, next slide, Harv. That's good. Innovating.
Oh, sorry.
So no, that's all right. Go show the house. I'd rather show the house than words. This is our Walden House, and one of the interesting things that happened when I first opened our very first Rose House, which was an old farmhouse that was literally falling apart, but we kept it together with Band-Aids and stuff. And after I opened the first one, I started helping other organizations open them, and every time somebody else opened it, it looked 10 times better than what we opened. And somebody had told me that from now on, every Rose House or every respite that you see, go up and whatever, it's always going to look better than yours, because it motivates people to really want to do a good job, and it's nice to see that. But this is probably one of our nicest well, we have, no, they're all nice now, but this is a nice picture of one of our houses in Walden, New York, and it's a nice, huge house to be in. So what is the Rose House? Many of you know, I think, what it is, but we started in 2001. It's a short-term crisis respite. It's home-like. It's 100% peer run. It's open for immediate access. I know that when Sherry Mead created it, she wanted to meet people before their crisis so that they could build that relationship. And I know that's important to people, but I also wanted it to be accessible immediately for anybody. And so we didn't have to know you before you come to the Rose House. And so you can get in any day, mostly any time. It's full customized menu of services that gives people structure while they're at the house. People know that there's professional music instruments, professional art equipment, things in the houses. So it's important to give people something else rather than just focus on symptoms or their issues or their crisis or whatever, and let them have an outlet to heal. The services are engaging. They're very trauma informed. You know, we hear that term over and over, empathetic and hopeful, because that's what we are. You know, it's who we are. We're people that have that lived experience, that remember how bad it felt at times. And when we can meet someone that is really empathetic and really understands us and doesn't tell us what to do or how to do things, they just listen and they offer ideas on how to get better and how to live a better life. That works so much better than being told, you know, what to do. They're all warm lines. Every house is a warm line. Plus, we have warm lines also in St. Lawrence and County, and we get calls from all over the country now in our houses and on our different warm lines, which is great. So when you integrate a system of care, I want to talk about the Stabilization Center. That was an idea that came from just working in the field, but also in Texas, they were doing it in Bexar County. And it wasn't called the Stabilization, it was called the Restoration. And I'm not crazy about the name Stabilization Center either, but everyone was using wellness centers and whatever. So the county executive wanted Stabilization Center. So I gave that to him, but he gave us a Stabilization Center. So it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week facility that you can stay at for 23 hours and 59 minutes. And what it is, it's a hub that connects you to appropriate services in the community rather than going through an emergency room and having that traumatic event in an emergency room. These are a little more home-like, a little nicer to come to. You're greeted by a peer. One of the peers from People USA is the first person that greets you and says, "Hi, how are you? What can we do for you? How can we help you through this?" So we have been running that now for over 2 years, and it's been very successful in avoiding not only hospitalization, but getting people within 24 hours into either a medical detox or a detox or a rehab or mental health services of some sort in the community. But it really connects people. And to do that, you have to build an integrated system of care where you're communicating with your community in designing a system that within 24 hours, they will take that individual. We do all the CIT training here in this part of New York that helps people, that helps officers understand that there is another resource for them as well. And we become strong partners in the relationship with police in our communities. So these are our partners. Harvey's really flying me through this. These are our partners in the Stabilization Center. It's us, it's Dutchess County itself, it's the MHA of Dutchess County, and Astor's for Children and Families. So it's across the lifespan, and Westchester Medical is our medical backup that's there as well. And so we're very confident that when people come to us, that they're gonna get the quality services that they really need or want. And so next slide, Harv. So now we have the Westchester Crisis Stabilization Team. That is a peer-run mobile team. It's all forensic. We work with law enforcement. We ensure that people that are presenting with behavioral issues stay out of the criminal justice system. This is a big win for the organization, for the community, for Westchester County. We're learning so much in doing this, and we're building relationships that we never thought we would build before with the criminal justice system, with the court system, with the police, with the probation, with homeless shelters. The staff are amazing that are working on this team, and they not only keep people out of hospitals, they keep them engaged in services in the community to help them get to a better place in their lives. And we don't hang on to them. They work with them for just a limited amount of time. These are the departments we work with. Harvey's really flying through this. The courts, these are the police departments we work with. And because we got so busy in the town of Greenberg, we actually have an office space there now that we go and work with them. But the police can call from the community. The staff, if they're available, they will go out and drive, to see that individual, to work with that individual, or will telephonically, set them up for a meeting. But the staff work way beyond their means in doing this, because they're so dedicated, and it's just a really good service to have. And we're finally going into some research to create an evidence-based practice, or get some at least research behind it to show the outcomes, which have been real good. The courts, like I say, they're, we're there, we're available, we're on call 24/7 if they need us to engage. So it's a well-rounded system that really focuses on moving people away from the criminal justice system itself. Next slide. Oh, good. It's a blank slide. So here's a graphic of what we've been doing with the COVID and the virtual groups. And I have to say, all of my staff, I have over 85 staff, and they are all engaged telephonically every day, video every day. We do groups that are, through Google Hangouts and through Zoom and whatever other media we have. We've upgraded our entire IT systems and phone systems, and we're continuing to do that, actually, because capacity is getting reached and we don't want to miss anybody. It's been very successful in running a lot of these groups, and the staff are even offering to do more groups as we're learning and growing from this. And I think we've been getting people from all over the country that have been calling into these. So it's been, an experience, in our organization to kind of spread our wings a little bit and serve more people than we usually do. Our rows houses are temporarily closed right now because of the COVID, because of some folks that were diagnosed. And so we do want to keep everyone safe, but they are telephonic 24/7. We're available. Staff are available to deliver foods and things like that if they need to. The mobile team in Westchester is still going out, but they're being safe when they go out. We're doing the best we can. Every day we're checking in and trying to make sure that we're staying in touch with the people that we're serving. So I can't thank my staff enough, my leadership, everybody that works at People USA have been just absolutely amazing. That's it.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Again, a big apology to you. You had so much good to say, and the chat box is ringing off about how all of you had so much to say, and this is always a NIAPR's issue, is we always try to give too much in too little time, and we'll make that up by doing, follow-ups. Maybe these folks can come back and we'll do more interactive Q&A than just the presentations. But I promise you we will fix this. We will come back and take care of this. We're now doing final remarks. So those of you who are in this room, please stay. We're only going to take about 10, 15 minutes. And those of you that have been coming in the room from the last workshop, welcome. I hope you enjoyed what you heard from our incredible innovators. That's the thing I would just say in closing on the peer innovators. You really are innovators and trailblazers and people of mind and heart, and we're just so lucky to have you and have you in New York. And I know from our work across the country and Steve's that what you're doing and what we do here is precious. We're not just being arrogant in New York. We really do incredibly important things, and so much, so much to teach out there in the country. So thank you. I'm going to, I guess, slide into final remarks because Len is just on my back, so as he should be. So basically, let me just see if I can. I'm not even sure I can come back and show you my face here. Show video panel, and I'd like you to see who I am once in a while here. Start video. Okay. So anyway, thank you very much for joining us today. And the observations I have, and I'm happy to take some comments as you're from what you've seen, because what you heard today. For me, certainly the heart. Everyone who spoke was coming from the heart. These are the kind of folks you want at a time when it's heartbreaking and heart-wrenching and so much pain. Kirsten's comment about the anguish of watching someone pass and someone deal with that is just, that's the environment with the challenge we face. At the same time, people had so much to say of a productive and positive sort of way about how they were dealing with that. Clearly the power of the virtual, just everyone has flipped over to that. It has its limitations, but there's a lot of advantages. The power of the virtual for this event, we've had 430 people today, 430 or so last week. So people are getting this information, and only because of these means, these Zooms and the virtual means as well. We heard from OMH and all of the effort that's going on there to really spread information and look at what's happening in the facilities. We heard about the North Country and how the virtual is essential there, where they've had, they've been isolated and transportation issues. Robin Kruger in Niagara Falls really was talking about how much of their agency is still face-to-face. And they have groups that are less people but more space, so people can encounter each other, but in a safer way. And their pros is open, and their shelter's open, and their pantry. And Robin comes in to work several times a week to make that statement. Tiana and Just Baltic, just got to go to Facebook and do Baltic AEH, the incredible work that they're doing. They flipped the switch and went completely virtual. They have a huge program that they've made virtual. And they really, thanks to Isaac, there are people in state hospitals and adult homes who have masks that wouldn't. Isaac just went into action and ordered 50,000 masks, and personally has helped, make them go. And I just want to give him some props on that. In terms of the peer innovations, there was a lot of enthusiasm for this very innovative app and software that provides a very quick response and really measures satisfaction. There's a lot of interest in that. Very innovative, Doug, and I'm sure you'll get questions about that. And again, if we do follow-ups, we can show all of these in more detail. The INSET program is really proving to be that alternative to outpatient commitment. They have a very high engagement rate of people that are not supposed to be engaged easily, for whom you're supposed to need a judge. So, that alone is pretty amazing. And the work they're doing not only around engaging people in difficult times, or in a virtual way, or, face-to-face, they've really done extraordinary work there. And one of the things that's unique is the work they do with families and family reconstruction, which, people don't always expect peer support to go there, but it's very much a part of what they do. Kirsten's comments are still ringing, inside me, all the power of what she was speaking personally. But again, their programs are open 24/7. They have face-to-face programs. They have a lot of virtual programs as well. And finally, you heard Steve, and again, I apologize to you, Steve, but Steve, national leader in the models, but more important maybe than what you heard in the models is the conviction that Steve has, the humility, but the ambition to make sure this really happens and happens right. I've seen Steve throughout the country, do this, and he's always comes from this place, and he's helped save a lot of lives by bringing these models around the state and around the country. So Steve, I just want to thank you for all your work and for your patience and what happened today with the delay. So, I would say if there's a way to take comments or questions using the chat box, rather than have me sort of give my impressions of things, I would like to do that. So I'm opening the chat box. And I don't know, Len, if you're looking at it too, but if there's anything you can pick out that's worth bringing up here, that would be great.
Well, we have a comment from Shaku. Congratulations and thank you, Harvey, and everyone at NIAPRS for continuing to offer successful and thought-provoking opportunities for transformation executive leadership. I hope it will be recognized for the value you offered here for free during these difficult times.
Well, one thing is clear to me today is that in one of our next panels, we have to have Chaco there. And I mean that. I just think, Chaco, all of your work and all of your commitment and all the questions, your participation throughout all the events and the very smart questions. We need to hear from you more on the other side of the computer there. Let's see, any other comments of that nature? I mean, I hope you really, I'm just going to babble until you hit me with a comment or a question. But again, in these, yeah.
I appreciate all the examples of how peers are providing such valuable and necessary services.
Yep. Those are our friends out in Nebraska, I think, if I have that right. Or Kansas, maybe. Sorry about that. Kansas it is. Thank you. Sorry about that. But, it speaks to the fact that this work that we're doing is, built on the pain of what we're dealing with, the pain of that people experience in their own recovery, which is, I've heard so many people say, the times like these are not as horrible as they are. They're not totally unfamiliar to us. We've been there. We've had issues, maybe not to this degree where people are, viruses are causing people to get sick and die without saying goodbye to their loved ones. I can't think of anything worse than that. But, in terms of the other concerns people have about feeling alone and isolated and traumatized, well, that's what peers and recovery services are all about. And that's what all the speakers today were really trying to address, that we already know a lot about pain and healing and recovery and the power of peer support and of communication and collaboration, and providing comfort to people at a time like this. And all the innovations that people are doing, whether you're taking people fishing near a hospital territory, off the grounds of a hospital, or you're, have these centers open or warm lines, stabilization centers, PRRX, what they're doing in the North Country. I hope you're as excited about it as I am. This is presentations I was looking forward to, and I hope they've worked for you as well. And I will say again that we will be back next week in our presentations. I'll tell you a little bit about them now. We'll have several presentations by a national consultant involved with Open Minds. And he'll be talking about culture change and organizational change management, which has certainly, been the issue anyway prior to COVID. Everyone's trying to change the culture of their organizations to be able to operate in this more business-like environment, value-based payment and managed care and BACCs and things like that. So this individual is an expert, and Edie Schwartz will be working with him as well. Both of them experts in change management. We'll also be hearing from Pat Deegan, who will talk for the bulk of the workshop. Will be Pat Deegan tracing for us the history of recovery through her eyes and her experience and what she's done. And she's been such a strategic thinker and such a effective individual. And then to watch how she's been able to bring recovery into managed care and to tell a story with a managed care company head about how they worked together and what it did in the managed care company and how that gave access to Pat and all her message and her strategies to help so many people in Pennsylvania where this plan is. And we'll hear from Lisa Dixon, who among many things is a psychiatrist and someone who certainly is able to speak on behalf of the medical model, even a progressive one. And so Pat, they might have said peers and peer support and recovery is incompatible with both managed care and psychiatry. Pat will prove us wrong if folks feel that way. And then we'll end with a wonderful workshop on building a trauma-informed organization with Eve Addis. So we hope you come next week. Don't forget to arrange to get your CEUs. Look for on the homepage. You'll see all of this material today recorded, and also PowerPoints will be there too. And I will also get you a separate phone call with Steve Michio, where you can ask all your questions for Steve, because I I shorted them some time. Anyway, thanks so much. Be well, be safe, be strong, and we'll see you in a week, if not earlier.